This is Sarah Mikesell with the Pig Site, and today we're speaking with Dr. Tom Delfonso. He is the worldwide director of animal nutrition at the U.S. Soybean Export Council. Thanks for being with us today, Tom.
Hi, Sarah. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining me. And today we're going to talk about SRD and heat stress. And swine respiratory disease and heat stress can reduce feed intake and pig growth, creating variability in the herd. How does U.S. soy help pigs maintain feed intake and growth consistency when other protein sources or synthetic amino acids often fall short?
Yes, Sarah, this is some results of some very interesting research that's come out of the swine scientific community. Let's start with the respiratory disease. What we've seen is that in cold weather, there's more incidence of respiratory disease. And for whatever reason, there's a number of functional compounds in soybean meal that help to alleviate the symptoms of the respiratory disease at the time it happens. But then something else happens, very curious. Later in the year, as it starts to get hot, those animals that were affected by swine respiratory disease tend to be hit harder by heat stress. And there's a number of different approaches to try to get the nutrients into the animal. If they're, they say feed a fever, starve a cold.
Right.
If the animal's not eating, particularly with pigs, that's not very good economically. We want them eating their diet and consuming the essential nutrients that they need. So what does a nutritionist do when the feed consumption drops, especially during hot weather? Well, they'll supplement. They'll supplement with synthetic amino acids. They'll boost the protein levels, and
Yeah.
and what the industry has found is that really doesn't work. That getting this soybean meal inclusion rate up was what alleviated the symptoms of heat stress and brought the economic performance back. So it's important to know that you should have a source of soybean meal that is high quality, consistent, and with that, we're talking about U.S. soy.
Very good. Excellent. And U.S. farmers employ sustainable agronomic practices, precise nutrient application, and utilize natural dry down at harvesting, all supported by superior infrastructure, which creates a consistent nutrient profile and digestibility of U.S. soy, which is kind of what you were saying before. How does this translate into more predictable performance and uniform carcass weights at market, Tom?
Right. Let's go all the way back to the farm or to the soybean farm. It is the sustainable farming practices of the U.S. soy farmer that leads to that consistency and that reliability that we're talking about. And one of the things I don't think we think about enough is that U.S. soybean farms are family owned. 95 or more percent of all soybean farms are family owned, multi-generational. We've seen soybean farms that are seventh generation. So there is a real understanding of the soil, of the fields, and care for the land from one generation to the next. So what makes this sustainable are a couple things. One, the soybean farmers only use the inputs to the soil and to the farming practice that are necessary. Crop science has brought us the use of technology before many other industries, the use of global positioning satellites
Right.
to really understand the soil. So that's the first step. The second is the soybeans in the United States do not require mechanical drying. They dry naturally in the field. And so this also leads to uniformity in moisture content. And because we don't have to mechanically dry them like is very common in, for example, Brazil, we don't see nearly the level of heat damage. So it's that
Huh,
heat
interesting.
damage and other types of damage that we see, and we've been tracking this for a decade now in great detail, getting samples from different origins and at different destinations around the world, and looking at the total quality of the beans from the U.S. having 5 times less damage than
Wow.
that from Brazil or Argentina. Okay, so now you have a reliable source, a consistent source of essential amino acids and calories in the diet. That's going to lead to more uniform animal performance. And in all animal production systems, having uniform animal performance is key to putting together a good feeding program, to be able
Mhm.
to predict what
Mhm.
the feed consumption will be, the nutrient requirements will be on the feed side, and on the processing side, getting those animals to the processing plant uniformly means you're going to make more money. You're going to hit the target weight range. You're not going to need to go in and thin a herd and take the bigger ones out and give the
Right.
smaller ones a chance to grow. And that's all management cost that can be reduced by reducing variability of the nutrient composition. And the best way to do that is to have high inclusion rates of soybean meal made from U.S. soy in those diets.
Very good. Excellent. Well, let's talk a little bit about research, Tom, because I know you've been involved in some of this research that's been done. But what does research tell us about higher soybean meal inclusion rates?
Right. Let me just pick up on what we were just saying. When you have a key ingredient in the diet, like soybean meal, that is of high quality, like that made from U.S. soybeans, then you have less variability of the entire diet. So if you have more of a higher inclusion rate of a low variance ingredient, you're going to lower the variance of the entire diet. So that's one. Having many different sources of protein and amino acids and supplements and digestive enhancers is just really adding variance
Right.
to the picture. And the other is when we talk about these functional compounds that are believed to be responsible for alleviating the symptoms of respiratory ailments. Um, it's having the right amount. It's having enough of those functional compounds in the diet. So, we're hoping to see 20, 25, 30% soybean meal in diets as a common range for seeing these benefits.
Very good. Excellent. And looking at economics, on farm economics, what measurable return can producers expect when adopting higher soybean meal inclusion rates, particularly during stressful periods? Because everybody's looking at the bottom line, right?
Everyone's looking at the bottom line. We've done some analysis, and some others have looked at this, and they routinely see at least $1 or $2 per pig of added revenue or profitability. And this adds up. I mean, in an operation
Right.
with millions of pigs, and that's millions of dollars. The other, so there's two ways to capture profitability: increase revenue or decrease
Mhm.
cost. So, because of the consistency of the essential amino acids and calories in the diet, and taking into account the proper values, really understanding that there's a lot more metabolizable energy in soybean meal of high quality than we're giving it credit for. By giving the credit of the digestibility and the consistency, we can lower feed costs by 7, 8, 9, $10 per ton of feed. Um, and that comes from lower need for other additives, less need for added fat, less need for synthetic amino acids. It all adds up to the if you compare U.S. Soybean meal to other origins, just on feed cost savings and consistency, it means that U.S. soy is worth $25 per metric ton more on
Wow.
average. But if you take animal performance into account and you keep those inclusion rates up, and you see the benefits in animal performance, particularly if there's a health challenge, it could be worth $50 per metric ton more because of these advantages. So long as animal protein is more expensive
Right.
than animal feed, seeing benefits in animal performance is going to bring payback.
That's all significant. I mean, that's a big significant difference, right?
It really is. It makes the choice of U.S. soy all the more easier to do.
Right. Very good. Okay. And our last question for producers listening today who are rethinking their protein strategy, what's the single most important takeaway from our discussion, Tom?
Maybe we haven't said it enough. The best strategy for managing crude protein is to throw out crude protein as a measure. We're beyond this as an industry. The methods that we use are over 100 years old.
Right.
We're not actually measuring crude protein. We're measuring nitrogen and we're multiplying it by a coefficient. And what we know is those are just inaccurate, and they're less important. It is the essential amino acids, their digestibility, and the various sources of calories in the diet that are most important. So we need to break this paradigm of
Right.
looking at crude protein and thinking that's all there is. No, it is the essential amino acids, it is the calories, and it is these exciting functional compounds that are bringing enormous value, and should be considered when looking at making choices as to which proteins to put in the diet.
We know so much more, right, than what we knew when those I guess for diets, pig diets and poultry diets too, right? We know so much more than when a lot of these standards were set. Is that fair?
It is fair, and I'm an engineer by training, so
Right.
I like seeing things work. So there's a
Right.
lot of exciting basic research going on, but if it's not applied, if we're
Right.
not using the best quality control techniques and taking advantage of ways of measuring quality of ingredients, ways of measuring animal performance, then we're missing out on the value that we know is there.
Very good. Well, hey, thank you so much for your time today, Tom, and all the information.
Thank you, Sarah. I enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. And to our watchers, this information is partially funded by the Soy Checkoff. And this is Sarah Meixel with the Pig Site.